Hi everyone, and welcome to Mad Knitting. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and it is early February 2024. I'm here to share one finished object that I don't have with me, a whole bunch of works in progress, and I'm going to talk about a book that I'm reading. You can find me elsewhere online as madtownmama on Ravelry and madtown_mama on Instagram. I'm coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin, where I live with my family. I work from home. I work for a nonprofit. And although I feel like I'm technically done with my work hours for today, I feel like I have so much stuff that's unfinished. So I might have to go back onto my work computer and try and tie up a few loose ends. When you work from home, I feel like it's really hard to maintain that boundary between work and home, right? Like it all just sort of blends together, and it's not my favorite thing, but it's just kind of how things are right now. I am not wearing a knitted object. It's actually unseasonably warm in Wisconsin. It's not exactly t-shirt weather outside, but inside I'm a little too warm with a sweater. So I just have this t-shirt on, and I just wanted to point it out because it says, "Smash the Demon Lizard Patriarchy." This is a podcast fan shirt from the podcast Buffering the Vampire Slayer. They did an episode by episode rewatch of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which has concluded, but I got this shirt from them, and it's the mood I'm in today. I am not in the mood for any nonsense, particularly male nonsense today, and that's just how Mondays are sometimes. Anyway, so finished objects. The one thing I have finished since my last episode I don't have with me. In my last episode, I was well on my way to finishing a pair of mittens for my son. They are the Radio Frequency Mittens by Mandy Powers. And at the time that I was knitting them, we were coming off our second major snowstorm of the year, and it was really cold outside, and he really needed a pair of warm mittens like immediately. So I finished them. He took them immediately. Even though it's not even that cold today, I think he has them with him at school. So I can't show them to you, but I will put a picture in here. I can show you the yarn I used. If you watched my previous couple episodes, I talked extensively about the pattern and everything. It's really fun. It knits up really quickly. But I will show you a close-up of the yarn I used because I've got plenty of it left. So this is what I used for the mittens. You can't see it very well in the finished object pictures, but this light color is speckled. So you can see that it's a natural kind of cream colored base, but there's light blue and light tan throughout, which went very nicely with the blue as the dark color. When I was done with the mittens, I weighed them, and then I weighed the yarn, and there is more yarn left over than was used in the mittens. So there is definitely enough left to make a pair of mittens of some kind for myself. I don't know if I'll make those or something else. The way that pattern works is you switch out the background and contrast colors for one half and the other half of the mitten. So you use like the exact same amount of yarn of both colors, which is pretty cool. I did find the label for one of these. I think this must be the blue. It's sold by Knit Circus, but milled by Utopia Fiber Mill. So here's the label. The blue color is called Chain of Lakes. The yarn is called Driftless DK, and as you can see on the label, it's 80%, of course it's going out of focus, 80% Rambouillet and Targhee wool, and 20% alpaca. 230 yards per skein. So it's like a DK weight. And it's lovely. There's a little bit of a thick and thin quality, which I think happens often with small mills. But the yarn feels nice and it worked beautifully for color work, and it's nice and sticky, which works well for color work, and my son really loves them. So that's my one finished object. Now I think in either my last episode or the one before, or maybe both, I mentioned that it was a goal I was thinking of at the beginning of this year to finish up as many things as possible so that I could have a clean slate. Well, guess what? I did finish some things, but then I cast on a whole bunch of other stuff. So what I have to share with you today is a long-ish list of works in progress. But I'm making pretty good progress on all of them because I've been knitting a lot. I've had a lot of meeting time, which means a lot of knitting time. So I'm going to start with more stuff for my son. He is turning 18 in 2 days, so he's almost an adult. We need to get him registered to vote because we've got elections coming up, important ones this year. And he'll be graduating from high school, which is kind of wild. Like, how did that happen? And he will be attending college next year. He will be staying in the upper Midwest where it's going to be very cold. So I have decided to make him a whole bunch of socks. And my needle just fell out of the one I'm holding now. Okay, so a few weeks ago, he was wearing a pair of socks that I made him for Christmas. They are made out of Knit Picks Hawthorne, which is, it's a little heavier than regular sock yarn. I would consider it a little closer to a sport weight, but he just commented that he really liked them. He likes the way they feel, he likes the color, he likes the fit, and he wasn't exactly hinting that he would like more of the same, but I took it as a hint that he would like more socks out of that yarn. So even though I have also sort of quietly resolved to myself not to buy any more yarn, I was barely a week into the new year before I found myself placing an order for more because I didn't really have any more Hawthorne that I could use for socks for him. In fact, we sat down together and looked at all the colors so he could pick the ones he liked. And it turned out that Knit Picks Hawthorne was on sale for the month of January, so it all just seemed to be kind of serendipitous. Anyway, I ordered 6 skeins to make him 6 pairs of socks. If I make him a pair a month, he'll have a half a dozen new pairs of socks by the end of the summer that he can take with him to college. And I've started 2 of them already. So I'll show you the ones I've started and I'll show you the other yarn that I have picked out for him. The first, I have a whole sock done already. I had a day-long conference last week and it was followed that evening by a 2-hour meeting, and I've had a lot of time on Zoom, and I was under the weather for a couple of days last week, so I've had a lot of knitting time, so progress has been moving pretty fast. So the first sock, this one's done and I've started its mate. Yeah, I think this is showing up pretty clearly. The color, oh, do I have a label? I don't have the label. I think it's a Blackbird kettle dye. It's basically black and gray kind of streaked together. It's supposed to be a tonal, but I see a lot of contrast here. So because there's a lot of contrast in the color, I did not do an elaborate pattern. For my son's foot, I use a size 1.5 needle, which I think is 2.5 millimeter. Let me check. Let me check on the needle. Yes, it's 2.5 millimeter. I cast on 68 stitches, and that seems to fit his foot really well. So for this pair, for the cuff, I did 2x2 rib, and then after the first couple inches, I continue in a garter rib, which means I do knit 2, purl 2 all the way around, and then I do a round of just knitting. So you end up with a garter ridge in what would be the purl column. And then I did an eye of partridge heel. I continued the garter rib down the top of the foot so it'll hug the foot a little better. And then I just do regular stockinette for the toe. So that one's done already, and I have started the second sock. So I have the cuff, and I'm a little bit into the garter rib yet for the leg of the sock. So that's what I have going. His birthday, like I said, is in 2 days. So if I really focus, maybe I'll actually have this done by his birthday. I have found that the second sock often goes faster for me because, you know, because I'm not constantly stopping and counting. I know exactly how long to make it and how many rounds to go on every part of it. So maybe I'll be able to have these ready for his birthday. We'll see. If not, not a big deal. He has other socks he can wear. Okay, so give me a second. Let's see if I have this ready. Nope, that's the wrong bag. Talk amongst yourselves. By the way, I have all my works in progress in this tote bag, like partitioned off in like smaller bags, just because then I can just pick this whole thing up and carry it with me wherever I'm going in my house or what have you. So, the other sock I'm working on for my son, also Knit Picks Hawthorne. I don't remember this colorway, but I think I have the tag, yes. This is the ball. I really like this color. It's like, it's more variegated, but it's kind of like dark blue and teal. And it is called Macadam. I don't know if I said that right. Macadam. Anyway, yeah, this one, because I'm gonna do like 6 pairs for him, I don't want to do them all exactly the same because I'd be bored out of my tree. So for this pair, I mean, it's still pretty basic, but I did 1 by 1 for the cuff, 1 by 1 rib for the cuff. And then for the leg, I'm doing a garter rib that's 1 by 1. So knit 1, purl 1 around, and then knit all the way around. Which isn't hugely different from the first sock I showed you. But I had to do a little reconfiguring with the math when it came to the heel, because I am very particular that I like my socks to be symmetrical. Like when I get to the heel, I don't want there to be any offsetting with the knits and purls. Hopefully I can explain this clearly. So this is a 68 stitch sock, which means that if I am doing knit, purl, and I divide those stitches in half, which is what you do typically when you get to the heel, you work the heel over half of the stitches. It means that over 34 stitches, which is half of 68, if I do knit, purl, I'm gonna start the heel with a knit, like if I want to continue the pattern all the way down the top of the foot, it means that for half of the stitches, it would start with a knit and end with the purl. And I don't like that. I want it to start and end with a knit or start and end with a purl, which works okay when I have knit 2, purl 2 as my pattern, because, am I explaining this right? Because over the course of 34 stitches, if you make sure you start with knit 1 and then purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2 all the way across, you will end with a knit 1. Does that make sense? Because 34 is divisible by 2, but not by 4. No, that's not right. I have this so wrong. I'm gonna have to edit this out. So on a 68 stitch sock, if I am doing a 4 stitch repeat, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, or some variation of that, over 34 stitches, which is half of the sock, say over the top of the foot. Because it's divisible by 2 but not by 4, on the top of the foot, if I start with knit 2 and then I'm purl 2, knit 2, purl 2 all the way across, I will end again with knit 2, which means that will be symmetrical over the top of the foot. So that works out great. When I am doing a knit 1, purl 1, so in other words, I have a stitch repeat of 2, a stitch pattern repeat of only 2 stitches. If I start with knit 1 across the top of the foot, I'm going to end with purl if I have an even number of stitches. And I know that it's this tiny detail that nobody else would notice but me, but it would still really bug me if it feels like it's off-centered. So what I did to solve that was, for this sock, I worked the heel. I also wanted, I didn't do an eye of partridge heel this time. I actually slipped the same row of stitches in a column here. So I wasn't alternating my slip stitches over the heel because I wanted this line to continue. So in order to keep the symmetry, I worked the heel over 35 stitches. And I worked the top, I'm working the top of the sock over 33 stitches. So that still adds up to the 68 stitch count you need to go around the foot. But it keeps everything symmetrical. And adding just 1 stitch to the heel count, 1 stitch count to the heel, is not going to make it significantly bigger. So that's just my particularity. Like, I am picky about certain details on socks, and that is one of them. So that's the deal with this sock. I really like how it looks. I think I actually even like the look of the garter rib in 1x1 better than I like it in the 2x2. So I may do at least one other pair of socks the same way I'm doing this one. Since I ordered all that yarn from Knit Picks, I might as well show you the other colors that I've got. These are ones he picked out with me. And, you know, I don't regret this purchase, even though I really am trying to kind of stash down, because I'm always on the lookout for sock yarn that is good for making socks for the men in my life who like hand knit socks, which does not include my husband. He's knit worthy, just not for socks because he doesn't like hand knit socks. But my brother, my dad, my father-in-law, and my son, they all love and appreciate the socks that I knit them. And they also are, you know, their style and their taste in fashion tends to be kind of traditional, understated, what you think of as masculine ways of dressing. So when my son and I were looking at the colors available, this is what we chose. This is Klamath Falls. It's a really lovely tonal navy blue. This is Grant's Pass, which I've already made him a pair in this color, but he likes them so much that we ordered another one. I don't think I'll make those exactly the same way, but he'll have 2 pairs of socks the same color, and that's absolutely fine. This is Slab Town, and this is kind of edgy because it's got purple in it. It's got a little more purple than I was expecting. I mean, it's still kind of in the brown side of things, but it's a little more color. And then this one is Conifer Kettle, which is a lovely deep evergreen. And for this one, I was thinking of maybe designing something that looks like it has a stitch pattern a little bit like pine trees on the top of the sock. I have to do some investigating and swatching, but I figure by the time I get to this one, I'm going to need something different just for the sake of variety. So that's my plan. I hope I didn't confuse you all completely. I hope I didn't lose you totally with that whole discussion of the stitch counts, but I really do like symmetry in my socks. So I'm very intentional about that. Okay, I've got one more pair of socks to show you. These I had started by the time of my last episode, And I finished the first one and I haven't made a ton of progress on the second one because I've been working on my son's socks so much, but I am making a pair for my father-in-law for his birthday in March. He is very knit-worthy, and I mentioned, I think in my last 2 episodes, that when we stayed at my in-laws' house over the holidays, I noticed that the pair I made him last year were in this little pile of laundry in the closet, and I thought, that is evidence that he both likes and wears the socks that I have made, so I'm gonna make him another pair. So here's the first one. This is as plain can be, which is just exactly right for him. I love this dark brown color. It's like the color of coffee or dark chocolate or something. You can see the first one's done. The yarn is Utopia Wisco sock. I bought it on sale in a kit with other yarn that I didn't like how they go together, but I like them separately, so I got it just because it was on clearance, knowing that this would be perfect for man socks. It's fingering weight. I use size 1 needles. I cast on 72 stitches, 2x2 rib cuff, plain stockinette leg. I have partridge heel, plain foot. I mean, this goes lickety split as long as I'm working on it. I've started the second sock and obviously not made it too far because I got distracted, but it will go quick. And I keep markers every 20 rounds just so that I can count really easily how far to go on the second sock. So, not a whole lot else to say about this, but that puts me at what, 3 socks in progress? And it's great for when I have meetings, which there are a lot of lately. Okay, now I am working on a hat for my husband. I announced my intentions to start this last time, so I'm going to show it to you. Now, at the time that I started this hat, we were in a real cold spell. That has ended. Here in Madison, Wisconsin, we've had 2 weeks of winter and that's it. Like, we had these 2 big snowstorms. It got really cold. You know, it took a long time for the roads to clear because we had a lot of snow, and then the temperature dropped so much that everything froze solid and salt didn't work, and it was a mess for a while. Well, now it feels like spring already, even though it's only the beginning of February. All that to say, there may be more winter coming. In the meantime, at the time that I started this hat, it felt quite urgent to make a super warm hat for my husband. Now it doesn't feel quite so important or urgent. Anyway, this is a modification of the Polka Polka hat pattern, which I've made many times. The Polka Polka hat is from the book Moon and Turtle by Sachiko and Kiyomi Bergen. And the idea is that it's a double thick hat. The original pattern calls for fingering weight yarn for 1 layer and lace weight mohair silk for the inner layer, which makes it very warm but also very light. And I have discovered that if you modify it for a thicker gauge, it makes for a really dense warm hat, which is perfect for the sub-zero upper Midwest temperatures we sometimes get in the wintertime. So for my husband, I am using Barocco Ultra Alpaca. This is worsted weight. Oh, I have a label. You know, sometimes I have the labels, would you believe it? And I ripped the label because this is old. I have had this yarn for years and years. There's not a color on it, so that's not helpful. There's a number. There's part of a number it ripped. It's something 81. It's this beautiful sort of heathery brick red. And I started it 3 times because I don't know what was wrong with my gauge. I knit with this yarn a lot of times on size 7 needles, and I cast on what I thought was the right number of stitches, and it turned out, I mean, it was going to be like a watermelon cozy. So I ripped that out, started it again. It was still too big. And now I am down to 96 stitches. I think it's the right size. It's kind of loose on me, so it should fit perfectly on my husband. Plus there's going to be a lining. I hope it works. Anyway, this is the outer layer. This pink yarn is just the provisional cast on. I've got a little ways to go before I do decreases. I want it to be nice and deep. He wants a brim that he can fold up and really have his ears covered. So I'm going to line it with some Classic Elite Fresco, which is a fingering weight merino, alpaca, and I think Angora blend, which is super soft, really lovely to knit with. Turns out is not very durable in something like a pair of mittens, but I think should work really well for a hat because there would be no itch and it will be super warm. So more to come with that. You'll see that when I'm further along. Oh, guess what? I have the Fresco. I can show it to you. It's just black. And I don't know if you can see, but like it's got a little bit of a halo, I'm sure because of that Angora. But it's, you know, this was discontinued years ago. Classic Elite is no longer in business. But I have a few skeins in random colors of this yarn that I picked up for some reason or another. And I think hat linings are a really good use for it. I'm going to show you a pair of mittens using that same yarn that I made for my son. And you can see exactly why you should not use them for mittens. These are a pair of mittens that I made for my son a couple of years ago, and these are the reason he needed a new pair so badly. They're only 2 years old, but they are absolutely wearing out. The pattern is by Uki Knits. I can't remember the name of it. It was a beautiful pattern. It was really fun to make, but like here you can really see on the inside how much they have felted and how they're just like chunks of the fiber that's worked itself free. So, you know, these are pretty warm and they're very, very soft, but they're not gonna last that much longer. And lesson learned. Like I wouldn't use this yarn for mittens again, just because mittens get so much wear and friction and everything. Hat lining, perfect, but you can see what I mean. Okay, I have one last work in progress to show you. It's a sweater for my niece. Where is it? Here it is. This is, I started this a couple of weeks ago. I needed a lot of projects for travel knitting. My mom had knee replacement in the middle of January, and I went the week after to help out. I don't know that my dad needed so much help with all the different, you know, there's medication to keep track of and physical therapy and everything, but I washed a lot of dishes, I helped with the cooking, I kept them company. I had to bring my work with me, but it was a good trip. So obviously I couldn't knit while I was driving, but I had knitting with me for, you know, when we were just hanging around in the evening or whatever. So right before I left, I started this sweater for my niece. Her birthday's in March. So hoping that I have enough of a head start on it to finish it in time. It's called Little Abloom. It's a pattern by Jessica McDonald. I don't think this wants to focus. There we go. And I feel like it's not showing up very well here. It's color work, obviously, in the yoke. It's a beautiful little flower pattern. And it's really fine gauge yarn. This is fingering weight. There's about 250 yards on a 50 ball, for a 50 gram ball. And I'm using size 3 needles and getting 7.5 stitches per inch with size 3 needles. So even though it's a child-sized sweater, and you know, she's like a tall child, so it's like youth, not like tiny child, but like youth-sized child. It's still gonna take a little while. Yeah. There, you can see that a little better. So this yarn I'm using was like on sale from Webs a while ago, and I bought it to stock up. It's called Perlina. Not heard of this brand before. It's 100% wool. It's super wash. It's very, very soft. I don't think there will be any problem with itchiness, which is always something I'm thinking about for children's knits in particular. I have this lavender color, and there's a really, really pale lavender I'm using for the contrast for the flowers, which I think will look better when it's blocked. Now this pattern, I am modifying it just a little bit. I may have to make more modifications depending on how my yarn holds out. The pattern does not include any shaping to account for like raising the back neck. You just cast on, do the color work, finish the yoke, and you know, continue on your way. And that surprises me because Jessica McDonald typically puts a lot of thought into her designs in terms of fit. She, at least everything she's designed recently, has a really good range of sizes. She's talked a lot about how she grades for different sizes, because you can't, you know, as you get larger circumferences, you can't just make the neck proportionally bigger, or you're going to have like this huge gaping neck. And so it surprised me that she didn't raise the back neck at all. And I also saw comments on some of the project pages on Ravelry that, at least for the child's version of this sweater, because she has an adult one too, for the child's version, that the neck was really wide, which I didn't really want that. So I cast on fewer stitches for the neck and increased after the ribbing. And I also added some short row shaping. So you can see it's a little taller above the color work in the back. And I added a few more short rows again after the color work before the sleeve divide. If you do all of that at the top, sometimes you can get this little bubble at the neck. We call that a neck boob. When you've got too much happening in one place and it just wants to bubble out. I think you can hear that I've got some hesitancy about this design. I think it's a beautiful pattern. I love the pattern picture she has. I'll make sure I put some in here. But I'm feeling not super confident about it because I've had to modify it. And also because like all of the increases happened pretty early on in the yoke. Like there weren't any once you get past about the 2/3 point in the color work. So I'm a little worried it's going to be bunchy at the top. But it looks fine in all the pictures I've seen. So hopefully that's just me second guessing myself. Anyway, I like how it looks so far. I think I'll know more once I'm further along and can block it. So we'll see about the fit. I am concerned about yarn. This is my second skein of the main color, and I only have 4 total. So I'm definitely not going to have enough yarn to make this a long sleeve sweater, which is okay. It's so lightweight. I think short sleeves or, you know, more like elbow length would be fine. I don't want it to be a crop sweater. I think that would look odd, but we will see. I figure what I will do is knit until I'm about done with the second skein, see how far along I am on the body, and then decide if I need to improvise something in the design to stretch out my yarn a little bit. Like I said, I bought this on sale a couple years ago from Webs. It's not available anymore. So what I might do is, there's quite a bit left of the contrast color, so I could stripe it into the body as a design choice. I could use the contrasting color for the ribbing at the bottom and on the sleeves. we'll just see. We'll see how far it goes. I do have more of this yarn in other colors. There's a pink that would not look very good with this, and there's a white that might just be a little too much to throw in there, but if I really had to get creative, I suppose that I could, but we will see. I also want to say that I'm not going to say this is my absolute last time that I'm going to knit color work with superwash yarn, but man, do I not really enjoy knitting superwash yarn in color work. It's hard to make it look good because the yarn is treated to be washable. It means that it's like not going to stick to itself. So that's sort of the opposite of what you want in color work. Like you want the fibers to kind of blend and stick to each other so that you have this like lovely motif that isn't just full of gaps and interruptions and things. Blocking will help, certainly, but you know, it just, like I went up a needle size. I went up to a size 4 to do the color work, and I think it'll look better blocked, but even so, some of these stitches just kind of look big, and I don't know. I wish I was more in love with this project because I've been planning on it for a long time, and it was really exciting to start it, and you know, maybe I just need to get further along, and maybe I could, you know, maybe I could just steam the top and see if I feel better about it then. But for now, I'm going to keep going because I don't hate it. I'm just like, have all these little worries kind of nagging at me. Like, what if it doesn't fit right? Or what if I run out of yarn and it's only like halfway down her rib cage and the whole thing's just a big waste of time? I don't know. I hope not. Okay. One last thing I want to talk about, because I know my episodes have been a little longer lately, and that's not necessarily what I'm going for on this channel. I like to keep you updated on my projects and, you know, try not to ramble too much. But I did want to mention this book I'm reading just because it is so good. And because it is February, it is Black History Month, I decided to read this book called The Warmth of Other Suns. It's by Isabel Wilkerson. It's very possible you've heard of this book before. It's very possible you've heard of the author before. This book came out in 2010. She is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and this book is about the Great Migration, the history of Black people moving from the American South to escape Jim Crow and moving to all these other places, mostly North and West. So Harlem, Detroit, Milwaukee, Chicago, and then like places in California like Oakland and Los Angeles. So this is from 2010, and she follows the stories of 3 people she was able to interview late in life who participated in that movement. She says in the beginning of the book that most people think of the Great Migration as happening like in the 20s and 30s, and it actually extended all the way up through 1970. It was one of the biggest movements of people in human history that's often overlooked, I think, because it happened over many decades, over a long period of time, and it didn't have like a singular leader. It was just, it happened because there were just so many people who had to get out of the South. And it's a hard read. I mean, reading about the brutality and the reality of life at that time, you know, what kind of violence was done to people and how it was legal. Like, it was considered perfectly legal, and even if it wasn't, there was no enforcement, no justice. That's hard to read. You may have heard of Isabel Wilkerson because of her more recent book, Caste, which came out in 2020. I have not read that. I would like to, but it's basically about the racial hierarchy system that historically existed and that we still have today. And she uses that word caste quite a lot in this book, so it's kind of foreshadowing, I think, that later work. But this is just really captivating because it follows these 3 individuals, and so it's very personal. and it's just very compelling, very good storytelling. So highly recommend. I'm only about halfway through, but it's hard to put down. It's a very good book. Well, that's all I have for you today. I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me.